Hello and welcome. This is the next episode in Song for the Soul, episode 6. Today with me is Mairi Wandless, down from North Curry, which is down in Somerset. And we want to welcome her with us. It's a Song for the Soul is an attempt to really find bite-sized biographies of believers, of Christians, because I think it's an encouragement to us to think about and to hear what God has done in drawing different believers to himself and the way he's worked and moved in their lives, because we can see some of our own lives reflected in them, and it hopefully will encourage us to do so. So welcome, Mairi, to be here with us, and I look forward to our time together.
Thank you. It's good to be here chatting.
Great.
Talking about the Lord.
Yes, indeed. Mairi and I met each other through the concert of prayer on Saturday mornings, concert of prayer for revival, and so the things that you're going to hear from Mairi today is going to be new for you, but is a lot of new for me as well. So I'm looking forward to that time together. So let's just go ahead and dive right in. What was your life like prior to the Lord saving you? What was, who were you before? We always think of the, amazing grace. Once I was blind, but now I see. Without saying you were blind, but what was your life like before your conversion?
Right. Well, it was quite a few years before I was actually converted. So, and I've written quite a lot down, which I'm going to refer to throughout. That's okay, because I know what my memory is like. Yeah. But I was born in Edinburgh in 1955, and I was the second of twin girls. So that makes me 65, and I just feel really young inside. So I can't believe I'm that age already. And I have a big sister.
You feel young inside, so
always young. My big sister is Nora as well, and I was very close to my twin. Growing up, we were very close, but big sis didn't. She had a more separate kind of life, I suppose.
How much older was she?
Same as between my girls, actually, 2 years and 8 months. Okay. But she always seemed to go to different schools, had different friends, and all that sort of thing. So Fiona, my twin, and I we did everything together. I mean, apart from the usual sibling fights and things, we got on really well and still do. Good. So we were christened as babies, and we were brought up in I'd say, a kind of Christian in inverted commas household, because our parents did take us to church and Sunday school for right from when I can remember. We always did that, and we went to youth fellowship when we were a bit older, and we would sit through church services. This was in the Church of Scotland, and we would just sit with our parents through that time. So it was a traditional, I would say, fairly strict upbringing. I was probably quite frightened of my parents. They're both dead now. But in many ways, it was a happy childhood. We lived at the foot of the Pentland Hills, so we could go up the hills and have bonfires. And I loved being in the outdoors and guddling about, fishing in the water at Leith and things like that. So all of that was really good fun and nice. And always church on Sunday. And Dad was very sort of dutiful man, and he was eventually an elder in the Church of Scotland. And he spent a lot of time there. Doing what elders do, but it's different from what I've seen elders do in churches today. But for Dad, it was more to do with, it was duty things and distributing communion cards, to invite people to come to communion. He was very good at going around, and this is my memories later on of him going around talking to folks and inviting them to come to communion. And anytime they had outreaches, he was always trying to get people to come into church. And yet for most of his life, I don't believe that he himself actually knew the Lord. It was all about religion, duty, doing good, being good, all that kind of thing. But anyway, that was our church background. And so there was a lot of church activity, but there was very little discussion at home about that. We always said grace as families around the table. And I remember Mum saying, well, we'll just dispense with that when we got older, which was a shame. But that's what we did. we did have other family overseas in Canada, and I remember as children making up the old tapes, we would tape messages and send it to them, and they would send them back, and there was always hymn singing in that.
Yeah.
So Christian religion was in the family, all of the family.
It was more religion than anything else, I guess.
I would describe that. I was, I religious but lost, and there's a lot like that. That's a lot of my prayers are for people like that, because I was like that for quite a long time myself. You don't realize it until later on. But so it was great having a twin and growing up with her, and we were very close. And but she was quite different to me, and the person that she was. We're not identical, and we certainly didn't have similar personalities or anything like that. She was always very bold and forward, and not in a bad way, but nothing bothered her, where I was always a bit more timid and sheltered behind Fiona. She was a good person to shelter behind until we got to secondary school, and then that was a shock when we were separated out into
so they put you in separate classes.
Yes. At primary we were together, so I always had Fiona with me, but when we went to secondary school, that was quite hard, although I was fine after I got settled in. But it was scary first time I was on having to make my own friends and things, but and so the next thing really was remembering about joining the Church of Scotland, and my sisters had done this before me. And this was in the local church down at Juniper Green, down from where we stayed. We lived at a place called Curry, actually. And now I've been here for many years at North Curry, but anyway.
It's funny you moved so far south, but it's called North Curry.
Yeah. But this was a mum's family church, and mum and dad were married there, and my sisters and myself eventually. But it was that was the natural progression from being through Sunday school and all that sort of thing. You joined the church, but in order to do that, we did have to go to classes for quite a long time, and I did that for about a whole year, I think. Lots of classes, learning, and I do remember the time when I had to sort of get down on my knees and ask Jesus into my heart, and I did do that. I felt very embarrassed at the time with the minister there, and I just did it because that's what you did, and then you're officially a joined up member of the Church of Scotland, and you can take communion.
But you weren't a Christian at the time.
I don't think so. No, at the time I thought I was, but I wasn't. Yeah.
It is amazing how many folks that I've talked to have that same. I have a similar situation where. Prior to my salvation, there was a time when something like that took place where, repeated a prayer or something. And you just wonder how, what the Lord's doing in working and eventually drawing. Yeah.
But I mean, I must have had a lot of teaching then. I mean, I'm not renowned for having a good memory, but I mean, everything I learned at church and Sunday school and everything and youth fellowship, and what I learned in those classes, I'm sure I learned a lot, but it didn't touch my heart. I never understood the concept of me being a sinner. It was just a bit like Dad's belief that you try to be good and you go to heaven, that sort of thing. And that's and joining the church is kind of, the icing on the cake, so to speak. Makes it all official. Yeah. So that's. So
what were your interests at the time? What when you're in secondary school?
Well, I was always keen on the outdoors, and I mean, I loved playing outdoors as a kid, and I liked doing that when we were at secondary school. I did a lot of sport. I mean, I wasn't brilliant at anything like that, really. I just was. I did go on and become qualified in PE, but I just enjoyed doing it. You had to be able to demonstrate all the different activities well enough to pass the practicals. But at school, I mean, I was down there for everything. Sports day, I was in everything. From javelin to the 800 meters to long jump, hockey, everything. I loved it all, and I just loved being outside. I love books. I'm still a great book lover. I just love reading books. I've just got loads of books on the go all the time. Can't really get on with Kindles and stuff because I like to actually physically hold the book.
I'm right 100% with you. I'm the same way. I like the paper. It just feels right.
Yes, yeah, I like it, and I can flick back through when I've forgotten the story
Yeah,
beforehand or what
that's
I was
right.
reading. So I love books, yeah, and I do like the piano. I was started
Mhm.
off at 6 with an aunt who started me off, and then went through the various exams. But again, it's just sort of averagey stuff.
Mhm.
Enjoyed doing it, play it in the church. Had gaps in my life when I wasn't playing piano because I didn't have one in my flat or whatever stage of life I was in at the time. But yeah, I really do enjoy that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so I did my PE, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. There are teachers in the family, and eventually my mum, my mum said, well, why don't you try and apply for this Dunfermline College of Physical Education? It was the only one in Scotland for women's PE, and it was sort of the big thing, you know, and I
Yeah.
just thought, no, I'll never get in there. But I did. I think a lot of people failed their exams that year, and I passed. And I must have scraped through the interview all right. So it was quite a long day of interviewing and practicals and all the rest of it. But anyway, I got in there, and that was thrilling. And that was a 3-year diploma course to qualify you to be a PE teacher.
Yeah.
So I liked all the PE side, but the teaching bit was a bit scary because I'm a bit of a timid person. So it all has to be a bit of a put on act, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I mean, it was fun and I enjoyed it. And the first year you had to live in. And that was probably my first time away from my strict parents and strict home. So I did go a bit wild with the girls, although they had very strict rules at our college in those days. It was an all women's college, and you know, there were rules about who came in and all that kind of thing.
Sure.
But I wasn't very good there my first year, you know, and then I had to go home for years 2 and 3 because we lived in Edinburgh, which wasn't far away. The college was in Edinburgh, although it says Dunfermline, but it was in Crammond in Edinburgh. Don't think it's there now, actually, but it was lovely. But
Was that tough going back home?
Yeah, it was hard going back home. It really was. I mean, well, Mum and Dad they kept me on a tight rein, and my twin was off and big sis was off, and I felt really under the thumb a lot. And we clashed a lot to do with boyfriends, that sort of thing, or a boyfriend in particular, actually. That was really quite bad. There was a lot of tension in the house, and I was ready to leave and all this sort of thing. But I can understand why they were doing what they were doing when I look back on it. They were just trying to do their best for me. But anyway, I qualified, and then I got my first teaching job. That was I was glad to get it, actually, because when I qualified, there was a shortage of jobs for teachers, and I just applied to every county in Scotland. And I got offered one in the Highlands and Islands, flying about from island to island. I thought, well, that is quite nice, although I'd be a bit scared doing traveling on my own. I'm so timid, but I love the thought of the Highlands and the Islands. But Stranraer Academy in Dumfries and Galloway offered me a job, and I didn't even have to interview for that. I just was offered the job, which was amazing. So parents took me off and got me sorted out in a B&B, and I was ready to start there. And it was scary leaving home. I mean, I am a bit of a timid sort of person. I don't like going into new situations. I'm fine once I'm sorted out and everything. It's that initial stepping out your comfort zone thing. But it was great there. The people the staff were really supportive. It was a very, very big school, and
so what was your life like there?
Well,
you're now out from the family home again, and
I was, and it was a little bit wilder for a while. Sad to say. I mean, I was smoking a lot. It seems weird, doesn't it? You're doing physical education. I started smoking at 16 and got hooked on it at PE college because everybody smoked. The common room was blue with smoke at a PE college. But anyway, so I was smoking a lot, and I did drink quite a lot. And I never touched drugs, though. I was always really frightened of, drugs, even, cannabis, anything like that. And it's probably as well, I never even dabbled in that because I think I would have been in big trouble, So, I was in a flat and not looking after myself very well. I was doing my teaching properly and everything, and doing all my lesson prep and all that sort of stuff, and enjoying the job. And it was very busy and took up a lot of your time outside of your school hours, as teaching does. And especially in PE, that took up all your lunch hours and after school and Saturday matches away.
Clubs and different things like
lots
that.
of, yeah. And being in Stranraer, we were sort of, you're out in a limb a little bit. We're sort of 50 miles away from air and places everywhere. You had to take teams everywhere on buses, you know, hockey teams and stuff like that. But it was great, and I enjoyed it, and I was playing a lot of sport myself there, so I was kind of super fit. Still got good muscles from those days, actually. 3 years at PE, and then charging around doing my own sport and teaching it all day and running around from blocks carrying record players and things and into the gym and the swimming pools. So it was busy, and it was good. And I did get to go on a school cruise, which was fantastic. That was really good as well, as a working teacher, and I did work my socks off. A lot of them didn't, and I remember them saying they had an end of cruise concert and they wanted somebody to run it or organize it, you know, and there was absolutely nothing. There was loads of teachers there from all over the county. Nobody put their hand up, and I stupidly just piped up, well, what's involved? And before I knew it, was oiked into someone's cabin, you know, and plied with some gin and tonic, I think, and told about how easy it was going to be, and spent all my spare moments rehearsing hundreds of kids for this end of cruise concert, which turned out really well, but it was hard work, But it was great. It was good fun. So life was fun. I was young, I was immature, but I was enjoying my job. But it's like all these things, you know, a lot of the time when I was doing stuff and I thought, no, I felt quite guilty. My conscience pricked me. And I just knew that a lot of the times that, you know, in my social life, the things I was doing was just not right. And I did go to the church there, but not very often. I think one of the assistant heads at the school was an elder for that church, and he used to come round on visitation and try and coerce me into church and things. So I went occasionally, but not very much. My lifestyle certainly didn't reflect anything of.
Did you have any shocks, any kind of things that gave you pause?
I think the main thing that came to mind that I've written down here, and it was about we had a regional head of PE, and he would travel around all the schools and just see how we were doing and check we were, you know, keeping up to date with everything. And he was nice. It was all first name terms and everything. And he was in our school one day and chatting to us, and he was, you know, we PE staff have little rooms that you know, where you keep your whistle and your tawse or belt. We don't use these anymore, but that was effective for discipline at times. Anyway, he was there and we were chatting and laughing, and that night he went home and he was in his shower, and I think he had a huge heart attack and he died. And he was, I don't know what age he was, not as old as me now. And I remember being really, really shocked when the news came out about that. His wife found him, and it did affect me hugely. And I don't remember being at funerals before then, but I was at his funeral, and it was such a shock seeing the coffin coming in and thinking, gosh, he was alive and laughing and in my little room with other staff members just a few days earlier. And I remember that was quite sobering and mind-provoking. But I think after a while of wasn't completely riotous living, but a bit wild, I calmed down and got fed up living like that, and wanted to get a bit more serious by my own place and things like that.
Sure.
And
so tell me a little bit more then about what God used to draw you to Himself. This is probably, you're in your, I guess, early 20s at this point, you know. So what was it that God shifted you with?
Well, when I was in Stranraer, I met my husband John there. And he had been married before, and his marriage had fallen apart. He was married very, very young, and his best friend was husband to my best friend, and so that's how we met. His marriage was over and they were trying to help him out. And so we courted and decided that we wanted to be together. And so that's what happened. And John was made redundant from his job in Stranraer and went all the way down from Scotland down to Southampton.
Wow.
to find a job. I thought, gosh, you couldn't have gone further away, really.
Yeah.
So that meant that I had to give up my job, really, to join him at that time. I think that was 1982. So that was a big decision for me. John came from a Roman Catholic background. Not that I would say he wasn't practicing at all. It was the same sort of thing. A bit like me, you go through your church stuff and then you leave it. And it didn't really mean anything to him. But anyway, I know my mum was a bit concerned because I was giving up my job in my flat and going down with a man who was already married and stuff like that. But anyway, we always knew that we were going to get married. That was the condition that I was willing to do that. I didn't want to just be an unmarried partner. I wanted to be his wife. And so that's what happened. In order to do that, we had to speak to the minister in the Church of Scotland back home. But there was a little bit before that I wanted to mention, and it was about it was more work actually. It was about another death. I couldn't get a teaching job when I went down to England just because the systems are different and you need to have another subject and various things. But so I retrained and went into secretarial, and I did enjoy that actually. I worked in a solicitor's for 2 years and enjoyed that. As long as I'm busy, I'm happy, But while I was waiting for this course to start, I did a little bit of chambermaiding in this little hotel in Bewley in the New Forest. A beautiful, beautiful place. And a car would pick us all up in the morning, the staff, and take you to the hotel. And then you did your job. And I think they took you home. Sometimes I would jog back home through the New Forest in my fit days. Can't do it now. And I remember one day the car came to pick us up, and one of the ladies was missing, and she had died in her sleep, and her husband had woken up beside her and found her dead. And it was just the huge shock of it all, and you think, wow, just here one minute and gone the next, and life's frail, and what's around the corner, these things jolt you a bit and make you realize that. Well, you're not really in control. You don't know what's going to happen, do you?
Yeah, that's right. I tell our kids, I said, there's only been 2 people in the history of the world that haven't died. The odds are not in your favor.
That's right. Yeah, but it's when it's a shock like that. I remember everybody being really shocked. And the car's there and she's missing. But anyway. We wanted to get married, and the minister back home at Juniper Green wasn't just going to say, well, that's fine, pick your date. Oh no. He wanted to know John's background and why we wanted to get married in the church and our history, really, and all credit to him, absolutely. When I look back on it, I mean, it was a big undertaking for us because we had to travel. It's it's about 500 miles or something. It was a long trip up, and we had to do that a couple of times. And he went through John with a fine tooth comb. He just really went through every detail of it. And so it's the first time I was hearing stuff about his first marriage and all that sort of thing. His Roman Catholicism, his background, and my background, because this was the same minister that had taught me for a year in these classes. And he didn't know about my life since then, but obviously I wasn't attending church and doing very much. So he and one of the conditions for us to get married in the church was that we went to church, started going to church, get involved, be more committed. And so we agreed to do that. Thought about it and thought, okay, we'll do that. And that's what we did. So I give him credit for doing that. I mean, John was kind of excommunicated, as I say, as a divorced Catholic, but that didn't really mean anything to him. So we agreed to do that and started going to the United Reformed Church, not far down the road from us where we were living. we were living at Dibden Purlieu, which is it's just outside the New Forest, out near Southampton. So we started going to this church, and it was a really excellent man there, a really nice preacher, very good preacher. He appealed to John, the things he was saying. I remember there was miners' strikes on and things like that, and he was talking about stuff like that, bringing it into your faith, and that was all very interesting and applicable, Yeah. But sadly, that man got called to Jersey. I think it was Jersey or Guernsey, and another man came who was a lovely man, but it was a bit harder with the preaching. We found, but we kept going, and that sort of. Well, that brings me around to my twin sister in a minute, but before that, our daughter had been born, and our first daughter, Judith, she was born in 1986, and she was christened at the church, and that I wanted her to be christened. It did mean something to me. I was thinking about God then, and I wanted him to be in it somehow. So she was christened there. Yeah, and then comes really one of the biggest steps. Another big step really for me was when Fiona came down to visit, and I mean I can't remember all the details of exactly what and when, but I do remember what she said to me. I mean, when we were walking along the street back to our house one day, I don't know if we'd been talking about church things, we must have been, but because she had become a Christian herself. She and her husband had become Christians. We thought they were all a bit wonky, a bit over the top and stuff like that. But still, we still loved each other dearly. But we were walking along the road, and she just turned to me and she did say, I'm just really sorry that you won't be in heaven with me." Oh, and it sort of stopped me in my tracks, and thought, well, what are you talking about? What do you mean? And I felt a bit angry and cross with her, but I'm so glad that she did that, because apart from feeling anger initially, after she'd gone away, it really made me think, and it made me frightened actually, because I thought, well, if I'm not going to heaven, that means I'm going to hell. That's what the implication is. That's what she was basically saying. I'm not going to be there. And I thought I need to really look into that. So that was a huge thing for me. And I wrote down when I was writing all this out and thinking about it, I shall love her forever for having the courage to say that. Because that's such a stumbling block for lots of us, is having the courage to say something. You sort of mention church and try and drop hints and stuff, and nobody picks up on it. But Fiona actually took the bull by the horns and came out and said something. And I reacted, but it triggered me off into looking into things, which is what I did. So I joined the ladies group in the church that we were going to, and they were nice ladies, and I went to the studies, but I wasn't learning very much because I felt there was nobody there teaching. We were just swapping ideas and things like that. I didn't feel I was learning much. Did ask one lady who seemed, who was, I think she had some position in the church. She came round and spoke to me and answered a few questions. But I still wasn't getting it, I don't think. She'd talk about the Lord and things like that, which I remember thinking her language was a bit funny, again, but it's just because I wasn't in the zone. I wasn't where she was at, But it was all, to me, this was all layers of, all steps of the Lord leading me towards him and finding him. Some people are challenged about things and they don't go any further, but what Fiona said made me look into it a lot more. So that was a big part of my life with her coming to do that. And then John's work was changing, and he had to change his job. Things weren't working out where he was at, and so he went to work with a big dairy company. And that went very well for him, but they wanted somebody to start up a new dairy in Somerset, and so that's what brought us to Somerset in 1987. It was a bit of a decision whether to stay where we were or move, but we made the decision to move, and we're still here nearly 34 years later.
Good decision.
Well, it was. I mean, he's had a lot of redundancies and change of job and stuff over the years. But we decided just to put roots down and stay put, because with his work, he was an accountant first, but then he became an IT project manager, and his work would take him to Germany and other countries. And well, we felt with his past record, we could keep moving, and he could get made redundant again, and we'd be moving about, So it was a lot of traveling for him in the end at Basingstoke, doing a 2-hour trip out and back. But he would stop off in hotels and things. But anyway, so we came to North Curry, and he wasn't working that far away from home. It was up, about half an hour up the road at the time then. And we kept our promise to the minister. And
you went back to church again.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. And we went down, we had a look at all 3 churches in the village, and felt the Baptist church was the one that felt most comfortable with, shall we say. It was, to me, it was a bit like the Church of Scotland, the way they ran it, and everybody was really friendly. I was a bit hesitant about going in because I'd never been in a Baptist church before. I just thought, I'd heard about baptism by immersion, or people being put under the water. I remember that as a kid, because being dunked. We had an aunt who was a Baptist, and I quite liked her, but I remember my mum just saying, "Oh, they put people under the water," and I thought, well, weird, but anyway, there we were. In the friendly Baptist church in the village, and that was good. So we were made very welcome there. It's only a walk up the road from us. Anyway, it's where we are now. It's still, we're just 100 yards up the road. So we got drawn into there, and I started to play piano for the church and stuff like that.
But still not being a Christian yet.
No, no, still looking, I think, and dutifully going, because I promised the minister we would do that. And that's what we did. So I kept going very regularly. I liked it there. I was learning quite a lot. I thought the minister there, the pastor, was interesting and friendly, but there was things that were sort of bothering me, suffering in the world, and disasters, and evil, and people doing things, I just struggled with a bit of all of that. And I wasn't feeling, I felt like I was going to church and just doing church, and but being a bit of a hypocrite at it, and I would look at, there was one girl in particular, when she sang in the church, her face was radiant, and I remember thinking, I've not got what she's got, and I'm talking to the Lord about that a lot, saying, I want what he's got, so there was a bit of turmoil within me, inner turmoil going on, and then there was it was the days where there was hijacks, and there were cruel things going on, and there was a particular hijack of a plane, and it was an American man who was killed and thrown out of the plane, and it was all terrible, and I think the captain was a Christian when I looked at that at the time, but the whole incident was just so shocked me, and it was like the final straw, and I went in tears to the pastor and said, I need to talk. And so he decided that he would start up discipleship classes, because there was quite a few other people asking questions, and so we thought we would do that. So that was supposed to be about 6 weeks, but it actually went on for about 2 years, because every week it was at our house. But we said, before you start, John, can you just ask a question? So we were there for 2 years asking and talking about stuff. So I learned a lot there, and he was very good, and it was just a really useful time in my life. And I felt that I wanted to get baptized and serve the Lord. Wasn't still really feeling, because we always go a lot by our feelings, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Right, so others got baptized before I did, because I thought about it quite a lot, and I kind of fought with it for a while, actually. It was in inner turmoil. Should I, shouldn't I? Was it right or not? And in the end, I decided that I should do, and rang up my pastor, and so he was very happy about that, and arranged for the baptism, which went a bit wrong, if you can say that for me. It was.
So.
It was a big thing, and I was looking forward to it, but it's like I wrote stuff down on notes, because because I forget or
Mhm.
I get tongue-tied or whatever it is. My parents had decided to come down and witness it, and I was thought, wow, this is
Yeah.
great, because I
Yeah.
can talk a wee bit about my, thinking I was a Christian because I had gone to church and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
didn't really come to know Jesus, and so I was going to say all this, and on the day, I just got very, very nervous and worked up and fell apart, basically. And I mean, I was with my friend Sally, who's sometimes on the concert choir. She was baptized the same day. So she was able to just speak, while I was blubbing. I wished I'd just taken time to gather myself, and I probably would have been all right.
Yeah.
But I didn't. So it just got worse. So in the end, I just mumbled a few things and then was baptized. And
Yeah.
I know my mum was dying a thousand deaths because she wasn't an emotional woman at all. And to see me like that, I was very happy to be baptized, but
Yeah.
because I wanted to do this and I was thrilled to do it. But I just was so disappointed that I didn't really give my testimony. It was it was just sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
From that point of view.
Yeah.
But not long after that, we had this American mission come over, and that was a time. This was 1989, and it seemed to be a time when people came backwards and forwards like that, and so the Americans came over to Britain, and Britons went over there, and we had a mission, like 7 people, and it was to sort of evangelize the village and do things, pizza meetings for the kids, the teenagers, and going to the schools and the old people's home, all that sort of thing, as well as events up in the church. And so it was all very well organized, and we had some of them staying with us, and it was a great time. But the very first night that the leader spoke was just sort of, wow, it was special, it was just an amazing. That was a Sunday night or Sunday, and it was amazing. And we thought, oh wow, can't wait to go back for the next service.
Yeah.
And John had to go away on work. He was away for a few nights, but I was up like a rocket the next night, and that was the Monday night. And this is a sort of a changing point for me, and I wrote down in my notes, I don't know if it was like a super filling of the Holy Spirit, or if it was actually my conversion. I don't know. It doesn't really matter, actually, because I know that I belong to the Lord. But this particular night, I can't even, Chuck, tell you what he spoke on.
That's normal.
But it was fantastic. There was just something, it's not electric, it's not the right word, but there was a special feeling in the church, with all the week that this group were here. And we realized afterwards that actually this group came and God used them to touch the church rather than the village. But amazing. But that night, when he preached, I don't know what he said, but I remember just sitting in the pew, and it was like for the first time I saw the filth of my sin, that I was a sinner, I needed to be cleansed. And it was horrendous, actually. It was vile and black and evil and awful. And I remember being really shocked at it. It was only a couple of seconds, and then it was like he pulled it all out, all that sin, and poured in all his righteousness. And it still thrills me when I think about it. His purity, his all the wonderful exchange, of his righteousness for my sin. And I really, really saw it clearly, understood it, felt it, knew beyond any manner of doubt that I was his, that I was saved. It was just amazing. And others, it was the same for others, because other people were affected and others were saved.
John?
Yeah, well, John came back, I think it was a Thursday, and he was a bit reluctant about coming up. And I said, no, you've got to come up. You've got to come up to the church. And I didn't realize that he'd been really wrestling in his soul while he'd been away from the first sermon that he'd heard. Yeah, so God had really touched his heart as well. So he came up, and he got saved that night. He responded. He was down there. Others were saved that night, and
it always amazes me, the grace of God, when he, there are folks that they're saved before they're married and they look for a Christian partner. But when it always is astounding when the Lord saves a couple,
Yeah.
after they've been married, and he saves one, and sometimes there's years that go
Mm.
by and he saves the other.
Yes.
But for you and he to be saved so
Mm.
closely together, that is just
Yeah.
what a wonderful testimony to his grace.
It is, and I mean, he knows. I guess he knows our personalities and our situations and how we cope. Because I know people who've been Christians for years and their husbands never, as far as I know yet, have come to faith, and it's been very hard.
Absolutely.
But the Lord permitted it for John and I in the same week, really, or if that was my time of salvation, if not before. But
yeah.
But anyway, it was
Certainly
very, very
a time of
special.
assurance if it wasn't the time of salvation. Yeah.
Absolutely. It may just have been that assurance. Yeah,
Yeah.
because always asking, wondering if I was really saved or not. But he certainly made it clear. And I was changed from then, from the way that I could speak to people. I did. I told my neighbors, I told everybody I saw something amazing's happened. And, it was, I couldn't shut up about it, and I know there were some funny reactions to that as well. But
always going to be for all of us.
Yeah. But that's never left me, really, that desire to want to tell people. So I think it's much harder today telling people. I don't know, because I'm just years down the road or what. But in the village, it seemed a lot easier at the time, because we would do events. I'm doing without my notes now, Chuck, so I might skip bits. But anyway.
No, you're doing great. It's all right.
Yeah, I mean, I was very happy those years, because we did lots. We did outreach in the village. We had holiday clubs, and I did brownies and things like that. And
well,
the kids.
Before we get into those things, before we get into those times after, let's think about your first song. Let's think about your first the song that you've chosen. So go ahead and introduce us to it while I go ahead and pull things up.
Right. Well, my first song is called "Sinner Saved by Grace," and it's by William Gator, and it's from one of the books that we use. I sing in a choir down in Devon, and done that for about 9 years. It's a gospel choir, and a lot of the songs we sing are just lovely. The words are brilliant. And this was one of the songs that we sang, and I thought that describes me, as sinner saved by grace.
Yeah. Pulling it up right now.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and listen. was lovely.
It's great to sing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
So from that time, you had started to mention it, but from that time, we think about our Christian life, and oftentimes there's struggles that come along. There are difficulties that face us and test us and try us. And so what was it like for you? Did those struggles come right away? Did tell us a little bit about the time after.
Well, I think the first few years actually after really becoming a Christian were happy years, and I was busy in the church, and busy in the village with outreach and stuff. And we did this mission, and it was the Mairi bicentenary year, 1992. And so I went with Sally, who I was baptized with. We went into the States, to Virginia, and did a fortnight there. That was very, very hard work. Loved it. Loved meeting the people in the churches, and we were very, very busy there. So it was all outreach and doing stuff like that, and good. And I would say sort of my first kind of struggles came when the girls were at school. Katie by this time, she was born in 1988, and they just went to the school down the road. You should open the door and pop them out to church, to the school. It was brilliant. And as they went through their primary school, we ended up, we had a Muslim headmaster come to the school, and he actually was a very good head. I was a bit puzzled as to why we were having a Muslim head in a C.V. primary school, and it was the vicar at the time. It was his casting vote that brought the man in. Yeah. And I did talk to him about that. But anyway, we had this head, and I'd be careful what I say, because anyway, when the kids were growing up, when they were in the school, they had a week of where they were learning about another culture, and it was sort of going across the curriculum with the art, the history, geography, PE. They were doing some dance and stuff like that. They were doing various things for a week, and it was really about animism. So my little spiritual antennae were up and buzzing big time, especially as that Sunday before this week all happened. I was used to just lead a couple of choruses or some things in the church, and I had this one on my brain about what was it? I won't worship foreign idols. I can't remember what it was. It was in my head all that week, and I took it to the church thinking, I wonder why that one's in my head. Yeah. And it was, I will serve no foreign god, or worship any other. And anyway, this week started, and the highlight of it at the end of the week was to do this animistic dance. And they had the little cakes that they give, and it's the worship of a river god. And it was all just supposed to be learning about how it happens in other countries, but I wasn't at all happy about that. And I did go down and speak to the teachers and the head. There was a Christian teacher. I mean, it was hard. I mean, I was in tears. And the teacher was gutted. She understood. The head was gutted, because he could see how upset I was about it, because it meant really that I was going to have to pull my girls out. And that was hard for them. I mean, I was talking to Katie just about that recently the other day, and she said it was hard because she wanted to do the drumming. They had drumming and stuff. But they were very good. They just accepted. I was packing them with Christian teaching as they were growing up, and they understood this was a spiritual thing. And I did. The head invited me to look at a previous, watch it first before I pulled the girls out, and I did watch it the day before Sunday, and I felt this was animistic worship. I watched the people doing it, and I thought, no, this is just more than just going through a little dance thing, So I said no, so I had to take them out of that. So that was hard, and there were other things as well. When I think there was a poem by somebody, and I thought it was really blasphemous about God. In fact, I think it was Katie at the time was in tears because of the language in the poem, and I went and spoke. This was a poet laureate whose name I've forgotten at the time. He's probably it was anyway. And they must have thought, what a sissy parent or something, but things like that I took very seriously. Anything spiritual like that, I was on my guard. And so there were one or two struggles with the school, although we were always on good terms. We left on good terms, but I don't regret doing that because I felt that they needed protection from that sort of thing.
Yeah, indeed.
And I did know a missionary who'd come back, from a place like that, and spoke to him, got in touch with him at the time, and he said, no, this isn't right. This is what they do. They have drumming, they eat these cakes, they do these dances, this is their animistic worship, So I just thought, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So I did take them out, and I remember them trooping up the path out the school with their heads down. But they accepted that, and it was hard for them, as it is for Christian kids today, actually, because all your sporting activities, Sunday's just another day to do everything, isn't it?
Absolutely.
All your sport, and they loved their sport. They were quite good at it. If there was any county trials or anything like that, even if they were picked or anything like that, a lot of the games were Sundays and stuff. So we just didn't do it.
Same with my boys. My boys have faced the same thing, that everything's on Sunday now. It's not most, it's just all of them are on Sundays. Yeah.
I mean, in my day, it was Saturday. All the sport was Saturday, and Sunday was still church, wasn't it? But not today. No. But not in their day either a bit. They did have, kids would have parties and things, and I sometimes let them go on an afternoon one, but not on a Sunday morning. Yeah. So so that was
a struggle for the family.
Sorry?
Was that a struggle for the family,
They just accepted it, the kids, but all the time that when they were young and growing up, see, the Lord was good to save me when they were little. And so I was enthusiastic and fervent in my upbringing of their faith. And John was away a lot, but he would agree, I mean, I did most of the doings, the talkings and stuff, because he just wasn't around a lot, but he would agree. But I mean, even, I've written down here, the stuff that they watch on telly, and as parents today, there's so much awful stuff out there. I do remember this, the Disney stuff, this Fern Gully video, I've got that stuck in my head. It sounded wonderful, the saving the planet and trees being cut down, but it was all about the spirits in the trees and all that stuff. So that one hit the bin, anything like that. No. But anyway, that wasn't really so much a struggle, I suppose, although sometimes there were difficulties if they were going to other people's houses and they would be showing something at a party, and I think, I don't know if you can go to that. So there were a few difficulties like that, but and I just, it must be so much harder for Christian kids, Christian parents today now, because everything's so much super sensitive and politically correct, so that was a struggle. And then John had a redundancy. Sometimes I always think it was before Christmas they used to make people redundant.
I think that's true.
Anyway, he had a big one when it was coming up to a recession. It was the country was in recession, and he was out for a year that time, and that was hard, just because we had a mortgage to pay and bills to pay and stuff like that. And I did. We prayed and looked to the Lord, and the church were helpful and supportive, as they were actually when the kids were going through the school stuff. But because they used to write to the school too, and their support of what I was doing, so that was helpful. But I do remember when John was redundant, and I went back to teaching. I hadn't done teaching for about 10 years. I'd been in for years, so it was quite a shock going into the secondary school to do supply. And I never understood why they never gave me PE, because that's my qualification. But I did everything, art, geography, maths, English. Well, that's good. I mean, all the subjects I took my highers in, I thought I can get by. And this languages was my thing at school, so I was okay with languages, and music, and stuff like that. But the English, I do remember. I thought that was worth mentioning, because at school, when I was doing my hires, we did Shakespeare's, we did Macbeth and The Merchant of Venice, and I was in with a school one morning in the class, and they were doing what was it, Hamlet? And I thought, I haven't got a clue about Hamlet. How am I going to get along through this? Because you don't know where the books are and stuff. Never mind if you know the subject, you're actually finding your way to things. And and they were an older group, and I thought this is going to be really difficult. But to my joy and delight, they were doing it in rap style. so they were making up these rhythms as they went along. So I
Mm-hmm.
would just help them with the rhythm of stuff without actually having to worry about the content.
Yeah.
Talk about, just really thinking it up as you go along. But anyway, that it was difficult, and I found it hard. I mean, I always think of all the hard stuff, but lots of classes were fine, and I managed them fine. But I punish myself for the failures, and I always think of the classes I didn't do well or didn't manage,
Those things always stick out in our minds.
Oh, golly, yeah. I mean, I would try and teach them when I think supply, a lot of the time they're just child-minded, but I wanted to be teaching them, But anyway, I found it stressful. And I used to sing that chorus in the car, it'd take me about 50 minutes to get to school. And I'd be saying, praise the name of Jesus, praise the name of Jesus. He's my rock, he's my fortress, he's my deliverer, and him will I trust. Yeah, I was saying that over and over and over in the car until I got to the school. And I'd get out there, right. I'm going to manage this. I'll do it okay. But we did. I remember stopping in the car. I got stopped in the car actually by the police. I'd stopped where there'd been an accident. There was a queue of us there, and we didn't have much money at this time, and we didn't realize it. But the car tax had run out, and this policeman noticed. He was just surveying the cars as we were waiting to crawl past the accident spot. And he came over and pointed at my window and said, "Where's your car tax? Your tax is out." I thought, I felt like the biggest criminal in the country, and dashed off home sort of in tears to John. And he was opening an envelope from somebody in the church with a check for more than that amount. So the Lord already had that covered. So things like that were amazing. It was great. So he really helped us through that difficult time. And then really there was the biggest trouble that I faced as a Christian, and it still grieves me now, and I look back on it with grief and sadness, was a spell of church splits that we had in our church. And it was horrendous and awful, and we had 3 splits during the pastorate of this one pastor, for various reasons. I mean, sometimes I think the enemy attacks when the work's going well, but a lot of it is just human failure and human sin, and we should have done better. The way we treat each other, the things we say, what we're trying to do. And the first split, I suppose, was complicated with this Toronto blessing. Do you remember that?
I'm aware of it.
And that was sort of supposed to be this massive movement of the Holy Spirit. And I think it started in Canada and then spread. And I went to some meetings in Shaftesbury, I think, from our church. Several of us went quite a few times, because you're sort of keen. If you think something big's happening, you want to know. But after a while, I'll just cut it all short, really, but I just didn't feel it was right in my heart. It didn't seem in order, it was disorderly, out of control. People were doing strange things, and some of the worship was peculiar. And Judith used to come along with me. She was old enough then. I remember somebody sort of suddenly shrieking in front of us, and we both jumped, And in Edinburgh as well, I went to some meetings when I was up in Edinburgh in the assembly rooms in George Street, and it was like bedlam. It really was. I remember looking around, and I was participating in some of it, thinking, "What are you doing? What, this isn't right." I didn't feel right, but I think that contributed to the first split. With
they're always difficult, and sometimes it, sometimes they are because of sins, but sometimes they're because of error, and sometimes it's the Lord, purifying, the Lord, saying, no, this, you need about the 7 churches in Revelation, and he's saying, I'm removing this bit, and I'm removing this bit, and sometimes that's necessary, and sometimes, but it doesn't make it easy. It's not.
Oh no, it's heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking. It is really upsetting, and for the pastors, it's hard for them. So anyway, quite a few left because, well, partly because of that and other things. And then another group came in, so that was exciting because we thought, oh well, the Lord's bringing in other people. Because when you're in a village situation, a lot of people, the kids grow up and move away. And even in our heyday, I don't think we were ever more than about 50 or something, you know. But there was always good stuff going on, and it was good. But anyway, so another group came in, and we were starting to be taught really about the doctrines of grace, which I hadn't heard as much of up till then, if you like. And he was very good, but the people that came in seemed hard Reformed, if I can say that. I just felt, I mean, this is my perception, it might be quite different for other people, but I felt we just lost our joy. You know, we used to go to an early morning meeting and we'd come out thinking we could conquer the world. You know, we were full of joy, and it was so uplifting. And then it all sort of turned around and we came out whipping our backs for our sin, and I felt miserable. And I just felt, for me, I felt spiritually depressed and miserable. And well, you know, another split bloomed. You know, there was difficulties with people in the church, and it was such a shame. John was having to go and do a lot of talking with the pastor to try and sort things out, and that was hard days, you know, long, difficult days. And so that was our second split. And I think that was really a very difficult time in my life, because you can cope with other things going wrong in your life, but if your church life's not right, if your spiritual life's going a bit weird, that it's just awful. And so I was having trouble with I had to have hip replacements, and so I was going through that and the bits of worries. I'm a bit of a worrier anyway, but anyway, coping with that. I felt, you know, I was starting to have big migraines, and I think a lot of that was due to stress. I was having a bit of stress at work, but the stress in the church didn't help, you know, so that was all pretty awful. But the Lord did help me through that. We did have our second split. It was awful. And well, any church split is, because you're losing people. And it just felt, what grieved me really was that it was dishonoring the Lord. It was dishonoring his name, that Christians are supposed to love one another. And, you know, we've got the passage out of Colossians that would be long suffering and kind to one another and be patient. And I mean, I talk to myself here, because I'm sure I will have upset people by things that I've said, because we all think we're right at the time. It's just awful though. So I was really praying and crying out to the Lord about, because I think it was about to happen, or I knew we were at that point. And I was reading in 2 Samuel about David dancing before the ark of the Lord. I'm not sure what took me to that passage, and how Michal, his wife, was you know, unhappy, you know, very, very upset at what he was doing, and despised him for it, because he had taken off his fine robes and was dancing in his linen. And but he was praising the Lord and jumping before the ark, and I started to praise the Lord, because I was thinking about how great the Lord is and how awful we are. You know, how good is his name, and how much we weren't promoting that, you know, failing him. But the more I praised him, the more it sort of lifted me. And that's a moment that I remember much. I was in the sitting room in the house here, and I was dancing around the house. I was just filled with his spirit. And it was like, again, I felt like he was with me in that. He hadn't left me. I hadn't left the church or us. I just felt a real blessing for some reason from that passage. And I think it's when you worship him, it's keeping your eyes on him.
I think that leads really well into your next song. If you want to go ahead and introduce us to that one.
Yeah, well, I chose this one. I guess they don't all exactly tie into every time in my life, but I did like the words of this, and I loved Don Francisco. I used to listen to him a lot and saw him in concert and a few times. Love his songs, and this one was I'll Never Let Go of Your Hand, and it's just a lovely song, that he's always going to be with you. And there was a line that, where is it? He said, I think even when we get it wrong, you know, when we don't do it right, you'll still hold on to your hand. So yeah, that's that one. I've
always loved Don Francisco as well.
Wow.
He was I came across a cassette tape early on in my Christian life when I was an early teenager. And for some reason, I think it was the one where he's singing about Balaam and the donkey. And it just struck a chord with me. And so I just got, tried to get all the Don Francisco I could get. So yeah, no, I know this one as well. Let's go ahead and listen.
Good. Okay.
What you've been hearing, I've seen you hide your fear, embarrassed by your weaknesses, afraid to let me near. I wish you knew how much I long for you to understand. No matter what may happen, child, I'll never let go of your hand. Been forsaken by all you've known before. When you failed their expectations, they frowned and closed the door. And even if your heart itself should lose the will to stand, no matter what may happen, child, I'll never let go of your hand. Life that I have given you, no one can take away, 'cause I've sealed it with my spirit, blood and word. The everlasting Father has made his covenant for you, and it's stronger than the world you've seen and heard. Don't you fear to show them all the love I have for you. I'll be with you everywhere, in everything you do. Even if you do it wrong and miss the joy I've planned, I'll never let go of your hand.
There's that portion you were speaking about.
Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it?
It
He's great. Yeah, he's great. Yeah.
So with that, with those struggles and things, talking about after becoming a Christian, you had spoken a lot about your family, about your older sister Nora. We heard that Fiona was instrumental in your salvation because of her salvation. But what about your parents? What about Nora? What about your family? How did they respond or react to your conversion?
Well, I wrote to my mom, I think, because we live miles away from them, so we actually didn't see a lot of them.
Yeah.
I don't know what Dad thought. Well, I do know actually later on, because we had blazing rows. Yeah, at the time, I think Mom was pleased in a way, because she knew that I was happy with what was going on in my life. But with Nora, I didn't see very much of. When Mum was dying, she had cancer and she died in 1995, and I tried to talk to her about the Lord then, and I knew that Psalm 27 meant a lot to her. The pastor would visit her and speak to her from that. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that she was saved or not. I remember praying for her when she was dying, and the phone rang, right, it just made me jump. Actually, it was right beside where I was, and it was Dad saying, "Well, Mom's telling the nurses that she's a Christian, she's going to see Jesus." And I thought, wow, is that an answer to prayer, or is that her drugs, or I don't know. It's awful, isn't it? But I just have to leave that one with the Lord, really. But at the time, I don't know how much they understood about that change that happens within you, and big sister's the same. We struggle. We don't talk very much about it. When I've tried to say anything, she's not open to it really. So and I know my sister's tried to talk as well, and really we just have to pray for the family. Had opportunities to speak and write, but that's coming on to something else later on. But yeah, dad actually, if anything, he was kind of hostile to the gospel message, because he always thought it was about being good, doing good works. You never understood about your personal sin and the need to be born again. Yeah. It just seemed to be a block, and he seemed to doubt the authority of God's word as well, which was a big thing for him. If you read anything in the Scotsman, the local paper, the Scottish paper up there, he believed whatever anybody wrote in there. And it was very difficult. I'm not sure. I don't want to jump out of line in my notes here, but he went to live with Fiona when Mum died after a few years, and it didn't work out at all. It was really difficult because Fiona was, and her husband, he had left his work as an engineer, and he entered the ministry when they were saved. And Mum and Dad never really understood that. But when Dad went to live with them, it was just hostile all the time. It was just fighting and rowing, and it wasn't at all what she had thought it was going to be like. And it was very difficult. And I found that with Dad as well. We took him on holiday once up near Fort William, and we'd barely got in the door and got our shopping. As we were unpacking the shopping, I don't know how it happened, but we ended up with this massive heated discussion. And it was like he started it. I wasn't pushing my faith on him, but that was difficult. And so I went to visit him once when he was in his flat on his own, when he had to move out, when it didn't work out with Fiona. He had to move into his own flat, and he was fine there. But I went to live with him for a week there, and I remember reading a book, and he asked what it was, or he saw the title of it, and before I knew it, we were in another raging row, and I'm just trying to explain things. So, I think the Lord really did speak to him before he died, but I don't think they maybe thought Fiona and I were just both a bit over the top with our religion. I don't know. Yeah,
it's hard, isn't it? I've got a large family of origin. The youngest of 7 kids, and mother and father and things, and there's not one of them that have professed faith, and it's challenging. It's really, really difficult, and you want them so much to understand and believe, but I know. But at the same time, they want to keep you at arm's length, and it's hard.
It is very difficult. Because you can't force it.
No, you can't.
But Fiona and Bob, when he was living with them, he would pick on what Bob had been preaching, or and if they were sat around the table, it was very difficult because they just seemed to have these rows all the time. It was hard.
So how about you and Fiona? How have you all been? I'm guessing there would be really
we're good. We're
closeness there.
Oh yes. She's still up in Scotland. She lives in Linlithgow, outside Edinburgh, where my big sister lives, and where my dad stayed in his flat. And we're always talking about the Lord, and they're out of the ministry now. They had a very difficult time for the years that they were in, and I think eventually certainly quite a lot of churches they gave up the authority of the gospel, really. They stopped preaching the gospel, and Bob knew he had to come out then. He had 3 different churches, so they are out of ministry, and life is quite difficult because that affected his pension and everything. These are things that my family didn't understand. It's all about what's making life easy and comfortable, and why would you make it so hard for yourself? But they couldn't carry on in that. So so we're very close and in touch.
Well, why don't you go ahead and introduce us to your next song, your third song?
Right. Can you hear peeping? Because somebody left a message on our phone and it's making funny peeping sound.
I can't hear it. No.
That's fine. Okay. Right. Well, my third song is it's the hymn "Praise My Soul, the King of Heaven," because we sang that a lot in our church in Scotland, and that still sticks with me. That still goes through my head a lot, that song. So that's why I've picked that one.
All right. Pulling it up here for us. I always feel bad because I feel like I want to keep going with the whole song, but
Yeah.
I know that we don't necessarily have all the time for that.
No.
But I do hope that people will take that and take these songs and listen
Yeah.
to the full extent.
Oh, it's a wonderful hymn, that really, isn't it?
It
I mean,
is, yeah.
it's funny that I sang it so often at church, and it's been with me everywhere I've gone, and
Yeah.
only appreciated it later, really.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
So we know, what we've talked about so much, that that God is the one that has accomplished so much in your life, and other than your salvation. I don't like saying that, other than your salvation, because that is the greatest thing in the life of any believer is our salvation. But what would you say would be the thing that you say, this is what God has done in my life? This is what I can see His hand moving and working in the way that He did things in my life here, apart from your salvation.
Salvation, yeah. I think for me, actually, it's just it's really having a peace with Him, security, purpose for life. Some of these things I've only really taken on board properly, even in the last year during COVID, because you know Him, you love Him, you read His Word, but then I'm still fearful and upset and worried about things. And when the COVID thing started up last year, I was really, really scared. Not forgetting it myself, but forgetting it and giving it to John, who's asthmatic.
Yeah.
And I was really worried. And I was lying in bed one day and I was just thinking, well, what does my faith mean? What's the word meaning to me? If I've got all these lovely verses, and I had lovely verses, but it wasn't giving me the peace. So I really spoke it through with the Lord, heart to heart. And He really did. A peace has descended that I've probably not known in that extent before. A real trust and peace. And there was a couple of verses, Isaiah 41:10, fear not, for I'm with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will help you. I will strengthen you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. And Psalm 31:14, this is another one. But I trust in you, O Lord. I say you're my God. My times are in your hand. So they were really precious. I'd go over and over verses like that. And Philippians 4, don't be anxious about anything. I love those verses. Loads of these verses are brilliant, but I wasn't really applying them they weren't affecting the way I was feeling about stuff. And I'm not saying that we go through life fearlessly and with a smile on our faces, but I wasn't experiencing the peace that I felt I should have as somebody who knows the Lord. And so he really put all that stuff to rest, actually. And I have felt much more at peace with him, and I think it's a new appreciation of his control and his sovereignty over everything. And that's just, you kind of know these things, but I hadn't really applied it to my brain and my heart. And now I do. And I'm not saying we're just sort of saying, oh, well, God's in control, that's all right. It's not, because because things are hard, aren't they? But it is a comfort, because I think, well, even like the song said, even when you get it wrong, when you do something stupid or wrong, I think, well, he's permitted that, and he's got a reason for it. He's going to use it for good and for my good, and hopefully for his glory. That there's purposes and reasons in everything that he does. And so that's made a huge difference to me. And I think when John had his diagnosis of cancer last year, that was another test, and lots of people said, oh, you must be really worried. And but I wasn't really. I mean, it was awful, because when you get the diagnosis, coming out of the hospital, I knew. But I mean, as it turned out, it wasn't incurable. His was early stage. But even so, it's something that you have to deal with and go through, and it wasn't very pleasant. And but we both had complete trust in the Lord about that. We were really at peace. And funnily enough, that I wrote and emailed and messaged loads of people and just told them that God was in control. We're really at peace about it, whatever the outcome, stuff like that. And it was great. So
and you can really point to those days of the beginning with COVID to where that really shifted, didn't you? And gave you that peace and understanding.
It's not being nonchalant about stuff. It's knowing that he's there, he's in control, he's got you in his hand. And these things they're really important to me. My relationship with him, I'm a bit like Dad was, that it's what you do, and I'm always thinking, what can I do? I want to do more, and I want to do more for the Lord, but it took a while for it to lodge in. I think Fiona said to me once, it's not what you do, it's who you are in him. And that, that was a big thing to think about,
We were doing Bible study in Galatians last night, and and Paul says that when it pleased God to reveal his son in me, not to reveal his son to me, but in me. And it's that sense of he certainly uses us for his purposes on the outside. But that's separate from the purposes he has for us ourselves in the inner man, and what he's doing in us, drawing us closer, nearer to him. And it's a great blessing to have those things.
Oh, it's fantastic. I just couldn't imagine being without the Lord in my life now, and everything to look forward to, because of Fiona always used to say, well, what's the worst that will happen? You get ill, you die. Well, you're going to be with the Lord. And think, yes, she's right, and that's a great thing, because we're going to be with the Lord, and in spite of all your troubles here. So,
There's a wonderful passage, and I don't want to say too much, but there's a wonderful passage when Elisha saw Elijah taken up in the chariot, and he says, when Elijah's taken up, he says, my father, the chariot of Israel and the horsemen thereof. Well, Elisha lives a long life after that. He probably lives another 80 years after that event. He's from everything we could tell, he lived probably as long as Moses lived, around 120 or so odd years.
Right.
And when he's on his deathbed, the scripture says when he's on his deathbed and is dying of the sickness whereof he dies, the king of Israel comes down to him, and the king of Israel says, my father, the chariot of Israel and the horsemen thereof. And it's the sickness that he's dying of is the chariot that's taking him home. And it's that sense for a believer that it's just not the same. The things we deal with just aren't the same, because the Lord is with us, and it changes that perspective so much.
Absolutely. I mean, and I still have to practice that every time something pops up in the the little worry,
Yeah.
it could be anything. It could be a practical thing to do with managing something in the house, or what happens if something, and then I think, just go to the Lord with it, Mary. Take it to the Lord, do what you can, and then leave it with him.
Yeah.
And so this is putting it all into practice, and it's really making such a difference. I wrote down here that I did study, most of last year I studied the book of Habakkuk. I love the Welwyn commentaries. It's about my level. Like the practical, and I love the way they explain it.
Yeah.
And that book just gripped me. I read it twice through and studied it and took copious notes. I mean, I forget stuff so easily, but it really thrilled my heart at the time about God's sovereignty, and about what the people were going to go through, and what are you doing, God? But how he works in it is amazing. And then how Habakkuk ends up praising him and and trusting him, and I love God's sovereignty.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead and introduce us to your next song.
Well, it's called I Do Not Know What Lies Ahead. Actually, there was another one which I really liked, Chuck, but I should have given it to you first, but I didn't, called Who Has Planned the Journey. But anyway, it's the same sort of theme. They're both good. Not knowing what lies ahead, but trusting in God who holds the future. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and listen as I bring it up here for us.
I do not know what lies ahead, the way I cannot see, yet one stands near to be my guide. He'll show the way to me. I know who holds the future, and he'll guide me with his hand. With God, things don't just happen. Everything by him is planned. So as I face tomorrow with his problems large and small, I'll trust the God of miracles, give to him my all. I do not know how many days of life are mine to spend, but one who knows and cares for me will keep me to the end. I know who holds the future, and he'll guide me with his hand. With God, things don't just happen. Everything by him is planned. So as I face tomorrow with his problems large and small, I'll trust the God of miracles, give to him my all.
Amen.
Lovely, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Yeah, it's great words. I was just thinking a lot of my hymns look like that sort of words, but that's what a lot of my reading's about as well. It
Yeah.
obviously comforts me. So
That's right. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, when I was looking back, it was when we talked about the church splits. There was another one, but I won't go into that. But three church splits is enough for anybody.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is.
And it's very sad to see the work finish. And yet, even that, God's working in that. And I did want to say on the last split, John and I left because so many had gone, and we thought our time's finished, and we left. And then about 3 months later, just couldn't settle. We're in the village. This was our church, and we felt, no, we'd come back. And we did. And in that time, I did want to say that I think, God taught me a big lesson then, because I thought the church was going to fold and was finished. But God's taught me that he doesn't need me there. He doesn't need me or John there. It's his church, and he didn't let it fold, and he built it back up again. So that was a good lesson for me to learn there.
Yeah. There's a Spurgeon quote, and I don't think I have it to hand, but it's something along the lines: if you think that Christ needs you to build his church, then the Christ isn't strong enough.
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's quite. Yeah, he doesn't. He chooses to use us, doesn't he?
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
But he's the one who does the building.
Yeah. So that was a good lesson for me. Yeah.
Good. So besides that, and the things that we've talked about, looking back through your life as a believer, what do you think what can you say, I think God's used me here. I think God's used me in this way, because it is a blessing to be used. And sometimes it's hard to see. Sometimes it's hard to see how we've been used. But
yeah, it was hard answering some of these questions, actually. It's been really good for me doing all this, because it's made me really think through stuff again. But and in the end, I decided the first thing I wrote down here about how God has used me, I've got raising my girls.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Well, I was privileged to be saved when they were little. And so I did pack them full of Christian teaching. The Lord was in everything we did, sang, everywhere we went. It was always about the Lord. And so they did grow up knowing and hearing about him. And that was one of the happiest times of my life. I loved being a mum, and I'd stopped work, most of the time when they were little. Did part-time work after that, but always worked around them. So the Lord allowed me to do that and enabled that to happen. So I'm really thankful for that. Just because I could spend so much time with them and talk to them about the Lord. So that was the first thing. And I know how hard it is for mums today, because so many of them they're out working mothers, and I don't know how they pack it all in. Sometimes they have to, because they haven't got a choice, and it must be really, really hard. You're tired, and so it was a blessing for me that. The other thing I wrote down here was just the opportunities to witness. And I know every Christian's the same. And it's funny because, I love the open air mission. I think their work and any street work that goes on, I admire them. I pray for them. I think it's brilliant what they do. But I really struggle with that. Even I've tried doing it a bit. I don't mind doing some door to door, done a little bit of that with people in the past. And so that was okay once you get going. But even just things like handing out tracts, I feel really awkward doing that. And I sometimes say stupid things to people, so I don't know if it's my thing or not. I can stand there and pray, but anyway, I would talk if I was asked to. But there are these times when I always pray for opportunities, as we all do. But he has given me some lovely opportunities, and then it's just fantastic to talk to folks, isn't it? And most times, the really great times are the ones where it just pops up unexpectedly, like the girl in the potting shed, or who I worked beside. She was only there for a week, but we had an amazing discussion. I remember it's the first time I actually stopped working, because I always used to chat while I'm working, and she said, "I've never heard that before." Wow. I never heard it like that, because I was so enthusiastic, And it was wonderful. I was really sorry when she left, actually, because I thought I might have more opportunities with her. Just talking to people like that. There was one particular one that sticks in mind was when Dad had died. And that is another story, how I think the Lord really spoke to his heart before he died. My sister was with him, and she said that a couple of days before he died, it was like he had a vision of hell. She said she went into the hospital. He was 95, Dad, when he died. And a couple of days before he died, he was very, very agitated and describing what you would call visions of hell. And he didn't want to be going there. And Fiona was talking to him. He was saying, "I've tried to do good and I've tried to do this." And she said, "But Dad, like we said 1,000 times, it's not about what you do. It's trusting in God. He's done it all." And it was like a light switched on, and he understood.
Yeah.
And she said he calmed down. And when she went in the next day, he was talking about the Lord and the authority of God, and things that had been a big stumbling block for him.
Yeah.
I mean, there's things that I'm not sure, but when she rang me, because boy, was I praying for my dad because I knew he was dying.
Yeah.
And we both feel that the Lord opened his eyes in those last couple of days, because she said the next day when she went in, his demeanor was completely changed, that the Lord he had seen heaven, the beauty of Jesus, and it was God's authority, the greatest authority on earth, and his word, and things that, you know, she'd been saying to him for years that he just hadn't comprehended. So again, I just have to leave these things with the Lord. But when I was flying up,
an encouragement.
It is, because lots of people in my church prayed for Dad. We all pray for each other's relatives that are unsaved, don't we? And I wonder if my dad is saved. And he was very, at the time, I think, he is. The way she was talking and his demeanor was totally changed. He was at peace. He knew he was going to be with the Lord and things like that. And I think, well, the thief on the cross didn't have time to do a lot for the Lord, did he? He believed, and the Lord gave him that light to understand the Spirit. So, but anyway, as I was flying up on the plane for Dad's funeral, I was sat right at the back, and there was a young man sat couple beside me. So he's just a chair and away from me, and he asked a question about something, and we got chatting, and I said why I was traveling up, because he asked, and it's about an hour's flight from here, from Bristol up to Edinburgh. And that was the most blessed hour, one of my best hours ever, because I said, well, I'm going up for my dad's funeral, you know. And then he said, oh, you know, he had a stepdad and he had faith, and that helped him when he was dying. So we went into the whole of the Christian gospel about my faith, my testimony, and I was bold and challenged him, well, where are you? He was called Cameron. Still think of that line. And I had him in my prayer diary for a long time. And just things like that. It was just amazing. And all the people around about in the plane that must have heard, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
It's about a bit like, was it who was it that Alan was talking about, Mrs. Harding, or who was it, somebody who found every opportunity, and the louder the better. It was a bit like that, but it was just fantastic to be able to talk, and I love opportunities like that. You know,
I know exactly what you mean. There's been times where I've been discouraged, you know, or feeling poorly, or something going on, and the Lord gives me an opportunity like that. And suddenly, what happens with that individual, I have no idea.
That's right.
But I've been changed by it. I've been encouraged by it, because I've been focused back on the Lord, and who knows what the fruit might be from those encounters, because they're in His hand and not in our hands.
I love it. I mean, the opportunities seem to be far fewer. I don't know if I'm just more or less good at taking the opportunities, or more fearful about. It's just you do try and talk to people, but they're just not interested. But
I think the past year might be a bit of an aberration with all the lockdown and stuff. That I'm hoping that's clouding our view. You know, that things are changing, but maybe we'll get more opportunities as things ease up, and if there is a normal that things return to, then we'll have opportunities again.
It's just trying to find the right moment, because you could say something every time somebody opens their mouth, couldn't you? But they'll just run a mile next time they see you. It's got to be right, and in the Lord's prompting, I think. You know, I mean, I golf now. not well.
Can't get away from those sports, can you?
It's like all my sports, very average.
That's all right.
Anyway, I do enjoy it, but that's another little group of people to pray for, you know. And I did again. I mean, the Lord just opened up a lovely opportunity. It wouldn't have been last year because of the lockdown, but the year before that, we were about to do a league match. That's a bit more serious. And the captain was chatting to me. She works in a home for people with dementia, and she loves her job and loves the people. And somebody had died. And she said, oh, well, I opened the window to let their spirit out. And I said, well, but you don't have to do that, you know. And I mean, we got chatting, and for about 10 minutes, we should have been out, practicing our chipping and putting and stuff. But we had a good chat about the gospel and about about the Lord, knowing the Lord, and going, that it was just things like that. You just know, you can get in there and say something. I love it when that happens. But I'd like to have more opportunities like that.
Well, we can pray for those things, can't we? That'll give us
yeah
hope.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead and introduce us to your next song.
Right. It's King of Glory, and this is by the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir, who I just love. They're brilliant. I sing to lots and lots of their stuff. It was hard to choose which one to have, but I've chosen this because it's such a praise song.
All right.
Worship.
Here we go.
And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Lift up your heads, O you gates. Be lifted up, you ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is he, this King of glory? The Lord Almighty. He is the King of glory.
Came down to earth and left heaven above. You took on the form of man and showed us God's love. Lord, you reign evermore, surrounded
It's a interesting thing when you hear certain songs sung by different groups, and I wonder what it was like, because we hear the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir singing songs like that, and all of the musicians playing instruments as well as the singers coming in.
Yeah.
I wonder what it was like there around the temple with David, and the instruments that he invented just for the worship of the Lord, and just what it would have been like and what the sound was like.
Yeah.
But then that's nothing compared to what one day we'll experience when
in glory
we're there.
Yeah.
What a thing to look forward to.
Oh, it's lovely, and I love that passage of scripture as well, of the Lord's humility. It's just it's amazing. It's lovely. It's hard choosing what to have, actually, because there's so much nice stuff.
That's right. So as we think about all the things that we've talked about, the journey that he's brought you on, there's a big buzzword in a lot of so-called Christian circles now about a journey of faith, and that's not what we're on. There was a then and there's now, and there's a point where we've been converted, but it is a journey in that sense from that point forward. So is there anything, as you look back, is there anything you'd say, I wish I would have zigged instead of zagged, or I wish I would have not done this, or I wish I would have done this instead, and those sorts of things?
Yeah, I think that was just about the hardest one to answer, actually. I think other people might find that as well.
It has been a difficult one, yeah.
Yeah, because it has been an incredible journey, and even through all the ups and downs. And I did mean to say, pray for pastors, because they really need our prayers. They're in the front line, and they need our prayers. And I also want, for my journey, I think from where I've come, I want to encourage parents who haven't seen children come through, because you don't know what's going on in your offspring's heads. Yeah. Because when it came to a crunch time for me, I couldn't actually turn my back on God, and I think a lot of that was to do with the upbringing that I had, being taken to church and things, and having that background. And that even although it wasn't taught much at home, it was obviously the seed was sown in my life, and so I want to encourage parents in that, because I wrote to my dad and thanked him before he died for what he did with that, trying to witness in it as well again. But I just think of the journey's been wonderful with the Lord. He's given me courage to do things that I haven't been able to do. I would never have dreamt of doing, like going to visit this guy in Parkhurst that I went to see, a guy in the village who got into trouble, and I got writing to him. I love writing to people, and I can write the gospel probably better than I can talk it, actually. but it was good, so the Lord gives you strength to do things like that. I think I wished I had been able to say things better talking to people. I wished I could have been more forgiving. I think sometimes I hold on to grudges. That sounds bad, actually, but no, it's hard when you're hurt and there's things going on. It's hard to let things go. And sometimes I think, right, I'm going to forgive them because the Lord's forgiven me so much. But it's actually, I think, no, actually, you haven't done that yet. You're still feeling a bit of ill will there. I was reading Gordon Wilson's book when his daughter Mairi died in a Skilling bombing, and the words he said of he bore no ill will to the bombers. He prayed for them. He did his best to forgive them, but he leave that with the Lord. It was just amazing, and I thought, gosh, when I need to have more of that attitude, really. I think I've said things that have been unkind and unhelpful in the past, and need to engage brain before I speak sometimes, that sort of thing. And
I think it's not easy.
Oh, yeah. But I think also I get discouraged too easily sometimes. And with the state of the the way Christianity is in our country, I think even in my generation younger, it was more acceptable and easier. Whereas now everything seems that much harder. I mean, our pastor was just saying on Sunday, if he was in Australia, he'd be having to go through re-education now, so that he made sure he doesn't preach on anything that's offensive or to do with gender and things like that, because that's their law down there, and it's coming our way, isn't it? And things like that. So I get quite downcast and discouraged, and then I think, well, hang on, because the Lord is working out his purposes. He's got his plan and his timing. He knows what he's doing. He'll give us the strength. So it's more a sort of a negative. John used to say you're very negative. Well, I think I'm quite positive at times, but I can get discouraged, and perhaps I need to sort of up on that a bit more. That's when I always used to say to the girls, when things are bad or you're feeling bad, start praising the Lord, and that lifts you out. Take your eyes off it and look to the Lord. And
that's what that Philippians passage is all about. That Philippians passage, it's all about that. Yeah. Because he says, after he's saying about praying about these things, that be careful for nothing and don't hold anything back. He says then, whatsoever things are true and lovely and of good, all those things, just think on these things. Well, that's That's
Yeah.
saying change your view from the things that you've been worried about, and now look
Yeah.
up. Now look up to
Yeah.
him.
It's a lovely passage. It's a lovely book, Philippians. Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead and introduce us to your final song then.
Right. Well, again, it was a difficult choice. It was nearly going to be one from choir called Jesus, You Are My Life. But then I changed it to My Times Are in Thy Hand. Where did I find that? I think that was in our hymn book, actually. I just like the words of this. I think that just says where I am.
Yeah.
My times are in thy hand, my God, I wish them there. My life, my friends, my soul, I leave entirely to thy care. My times are in thy hand, whatever they may be, pleasing or painful, dark or bright, as best may seem to thee. My times are in thy hand. Why should I doubt or fear? My Father's hand will never cause his child a needless tear.
There's another 2 verses to that.
I know.
You only sang 3.
Yeah, I know. It's a challenge sometimes. It's I feel really awful about the fact that I don't play the whole song.
It's not your fault. It's just.
But in that case, the artist didn't sing all the verses. But
No, you didn't. That's fine.
When I was a young believer, I was in my teens, and the song leader of the Baptist church, he would never sing all the verses of a hymn. If the song had 5 verses, he'd leave out verse 4. If it had 4 verses, he'd leave out verse 3. The only time he'd ever sing all the verses if there was only 3 verses.
Yeah.
So, what are you doing?
They did that. They did that in Scotland sometimes. Actually, too many verses, they'd cut them out.
I don't understand it. I don't understand it at all. I was at a small Baptist church preaching probably about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, and I came, I had prepared the sermon, and I was looking through to choose the hymns, and I came across the hymn that fit perfectly with the sermon, but it had 25 verses.
That's quite a lot.
Yeah, we sang every one of them.
Very good.
I enjoyed it, whether anyone else did or not. But I enjoyed it. Well, Mary, thank you, Mary. Thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing so much with us. Of course, if you're going on to this desert island, we're going to give you a Bible. We're going to give you a copy of the Pilgrim's Progress to take along with you to read. What other book would you like to take with you?
Well, I really, really enjoyed, and I've read this several times, and it's a huge help to me. It's A Promise by Roger Carswell, who I like him very much as an author. And he just goes through promises, because I've often struggled with which promises apply to me now, and all that. And it's brilliant. So he goes through lots of things to do with, healing and provision and all sorts of things. So that's a really good book. I would take that one with me.
All right, we'll give you that one. And what one luxury item would you like to take with you?
This was really hard, Chuck. John would be really cross and he'd say, "You never make up your mind." It was going to be a year's supply of crisps, but I thought, no, that's very old flesh. and then I thought maybe James Herriot books, because I love his books, and I love Yorkshire.
Yeah. So I got cut off before you told me about your luxury item. You were
Oh,
talking
did
about
you?
the difficulties in choosing your luxury item, but I didn't get to hear what it was.
Well, I decided to take a jigsaw and a board.
Okay.
So, a reasonably big one with
Yeah.
lots of colors, because I'm not very good at them. It takes me a long time to do them, so that would be useful in passing some time. But
All
I
right.
enjoy doing them.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We'll give you 2 instead of 1.
Oh, good. Thank you. As long as it's not one on the other back of it, you know.
No. We wouldn't do that. That would be really, really mean.
Okay, thank
Well,
you.
it's been my pleasure, Mari, and then I hope that you have enjoyed it. It's been a blessing to me, and we'll pray that it's a blessing to others as well.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.